At 2:17 in the morning, my phone rang. Not a normal hour, not a normal call. It was the nurse. "Your father's been discharged." Discharged? I blinked at the clock. The world was dark. My father had been admitted just 2 days before for chest pain. I expected updates, not a middle-of-the-night send-off. "Can you come get him?" she asked. Not, "Would you like him evaluated further?" Not, "Let's keep him one more night." Just, "Come get him." 3 days later, he was dead. This is the story of how the healthcare system broke him and tried to break us. The system didn't just fail, it targeted him, pushed him out, sent him to die, and then acted like it was routine. But this wasn't routine. It was a death sentence. And someone needs to say it. My father wasn't weak. He was 82 but strong, still drove himself, still mowed his lawn, still remembered all our birthdays. That week, he felt a little tightness in his chest. We thought it was indigestion. He brushed it off. But when he fainted in the kitchen, we called 911. At the hospital, they said it was probably just dehydration, ran a few tests, told us to relax. "He's stable," they said. They admitted him overnight, but he was confused, sweaty, pale. I begged them to keep looking. They smiled again. "He's stable." But he wasn't. He was trying to tell us something with his eyes. He was tired. He was weak. But they didn't listen. They saw numbers, not a man. Here's what I didn't know. Hospitals don't make money when seniors stay too long, especially those on Medicare. After a certain point, the financial incentive shifts. The faster they discharge you, the better it looks on paper. And for elderly patients, it's a race. A race to stabilize just enough to send you packing. A race to make room for the next patient. A race to maintain the illusion of efficiency. He was labeled medically stable, but he was shaking, disoriented, weak. He couldn't walk without help. He couldn't focus on a sentence. He wasn't eating. That's not stability. That's fragility. But to the system, he was an expired billing code. Ask yourself, why discharge anyone at 2 a.m.? Is that standard? Is that safe? Or is that convenient for the hospital? No questions, no visitors, no advocates awake, no second opinions, no chance for us to fight. Just roll him out, send him home. And if he dies, blame age, blame chance, blame fate. But don't you dare blame the process. He came home mumbling, couldn't hold a glass. His breathing was shallow. He looked smaller, not like himself. They told us he's fine to recover at home. But we later found out they had seen early signs of a silent cardiac event, something called STEMI, a type of heart attack that doesn't show up the usual way. They knew, but they discharged him anyway. Why? Because he wasn't crashing, he wasn't bleeding, and he wasn't profitable to keep. So they made a decision, send him home and cross their fingers. Day 1, he couldn't stand. Day 2, he stopped eating. Day 3, he collapsed in the hallway and never woke up. By the time the ambulance came, it was too late. And the hospital? The same one that discharged him in the dead of night? They called it unrelated, said it wasn't connected, said these things happen. Number. These things don't just happen. You make them happen when you gamble with someone's life. When I went back to confront the hospital, I met the attending physician. He looked at the chart, not at me. He said, "Medically, we followed protocol." Protocol? Since when is sending a frail 82-year-old home at 2 a.m. protocol? Since when is ignoring warning signs acceptable? Since when is calling it complicated enough to erase responsibility? I filed a complaint. I sent records. I documented everything. I called every number. I wrote every name. They opened a case. Then they closed it. Conclusion? No violation of standard care. Standard care? That's what killed him. Weeks later, a nurse messaged me anonymously. Said she remembered my father. Said he was one of many. She told me the night shift had standing orders to clear beds. She told me discharges at night were part of a throughput initiative. She told me my father didn't die from his illness. He died from the rush. She said she'd seen it again, and again, and again. The truth is, my father was part of a system that treats elderly patients like luggage. Get them in, tag them, and ship them out before they ask questions. He wasn't even supposed to go home that day. Another nurse said he'd been scheduled for a follow-up test the next morning, but someone overrode it. Why? Because they needed the bed. I found a note in his chart, buried. It mentioned mild instability during ambulation, just hours before he was released. They knew. They always knew. And when we buried him, I wasn't just grieving my father. I was grieving the system, the broken trust, the silent suffering, the way they smiled and told me to go, home and rest, while he lay dying from their shortcuts. Never let them discharge a senior in the middle of the night. Ask to see all notes. Ask for full explanations. Push back. If something feels wrong, don't leave quietly. File complaints. Raise hell. Hire an advocate. Demand a second look. Demand dignity. Because if you don't, you may bury someone you love. He deserved more than a wheelchair in the dark. More than silence. More than a rushed discharge and a generic apology. He gave his life to his family, his job, his country, and they tossed him out like a number. Hospitals profit from speed, from volume, from seniors who don't speak up. They want you to be quiet, to trust blindly, to forget. Don't. Because if it happened to him, it can happen to you. Speak up. Ask questions. Never accept a discharge that feels wrong. And if your gut says no, listen to it. Because you don't get a second chance once the bed is empty. And sometimes, the hospital isn't just where you go to heal, it's where they quietly send you home to die. And then they wash their hands. They move on. They forget your name by the next shift change. But you don't forget. You wake up in the middle of the night wondering what would have happened if you had pushed harder. You replay the moment they said, "He's stable," like a curse. You stare at his empty chair. You whisper, "I'm sorry." You fight the guilt that wasn't yours to carry. Because they made it seem like it was normal. But it wasn't. They stole time. They stole peace. They turned end-of-life care into paperwork and quotas. They didn't just let him die. They scheduled it. And when you look around, you realize it's not just your family. It's happening to someone else's father tonight, to someone else's mother tomorrow morning. There's an entire generation being pushed out quietly, efficiently, and profitably, one discharge at a time. This is not a mistake. It's a model. They don't warn you when they change the rules. They don't send alerts when they cut budgets. They don't tell you that discharge doesn't mean safe. It means you're no longer their problem. They smile while they file. They wheel them out while they sanitize the bed. They check boxes while families fall apart, and they rely on your silence. But silence is complicity, so speak loudly. Shake the system. Demand answers before the next patient becomes the next story. We have to stop normalizing quiet exits for people who deserve dignity. We have to stop letting hospitals become machines of indifference. We have to stop pretending this is acceptable. Because the next call at 2 a.m. could be yours. And when it comes, it won't sound like a tragedy. It'll sound like a nurse saying, "He's been discharged." That's the warning. You'll just be too stunned to hear it. And once it happens, you'll never see hospitals the same way again. You'll remember every cold hallway, every blank stare, every clipped voice saying, "He was fine when he left." You'll remember the way no one called to check in, how quickly they moved on, how the system made space for another name, another file, another billing code. But you'll still be stuck in that room, holding your coat, holding his bag, wondering how the people who swore to care could be so casual about death. And you'll ask yourself why you didn't scream, why you didn't stand in front of that wheelchair and say, "He's not ready." Because now you understand. You understand that protocols are written in margins, not morals, that metrics win over mercy, that efficiency tramples humanity. You understand that they call it healthcare, but it's not always care. It's not about healing. It's about throughput, revenue, rotation. And as long as families stay silent, as long as grief stays private, they'll keep doing it. One discharge at a time. So let your story matter. Raise your voice for the ones who can't. Not just for your father, but for every person sitting alone in a hospital bed tonight, hoping someone will fight for them before it's too late. And if your voice trembles, speak anyway. Because silence is what they count on. Because behind every patient rushed out the door, there's a story, unfinished, ignored, erased. Because this isn't just about one death. It's about the system that buries the truth beneath the paperwork. And if you're reading this, maybe you're the one who will refuse to let it keep happening. Maybe you're the voice that says, no more. No more quiet deaths. No more midnight releases. No more pretending speed equals care. If enough of us scream, if enough of us demand answers, if enough of us drag the spotlight onto what's being done in the shadows, then maybe the next patient won't just be a number. Maybe they'll get to go home in the light of day. When they're truly ready. When healing, not convenience, makes the decision. And maybe then our grief won't be laced with guilt. Maybe then our anger will.